Server actions were introduced as an exciting new feature on Nextjs 13.4 as an alpha feature, and it became a stable feature on Nextjs 14. Server actions can be invoked using the action attribute in a form element. Server actions are not limited to form and can be invoked from event handlers, useEffect, third-party libraries, and other form elements like button. Server actions are deeply integrated into the entire app router model. Server components support progressive enhancement by default, meaning the form will be submitted even if JavaScript hasn't loaded yet or is disabled. API is the way to decouple two or more different systems to not make tied dependencies with each other. The API server will commonly expose data for all consumers. The majority of API is REST API, especially in web development, which is communication based on HTTP. If we apply in today's web development, this is mostly used for decoupling front-end and back-end systems. Consumer of API may not only be the web front-end. It may native application, another external program, or a bunch of other programs. This was already on 10 to 20 years ago as service-oriented architecture in the software world and monolithic, which is tied to coupling architecture, is the major anti-pattern. But Nextjs 13.4 introduces a new feature called server action. This is the feature where the client-side component can call server-side action without an API call. Okay, this is exactly what I said, monolithic architecture. Why was Vercel introduced? I have researched and gone around several resources, and here I want to share my findings. Let's look into one example code for utilizing server actions. Here we have a simplified login page for client-side components. And this import getUser from server actions. This getUser to return user information directly, but this may change to query information from database practically. Go back to client-side. We have two methods, one for login and another for logout. Login method will change login status and getUser from server action to fetch user information. Logout method will just reset the state. There is a conditional rendering depending on the login status. If the user is not logged in, then it shows someone and a login button. But if the user log in, then it will show the user name and logout button. Let's see how it works. If I click login button, then it will change render without any HTTP communication between the front end and back end. So this works as expected. This is quite a simple one, but I suddenly came up with the benefit of using server actions instead of API router. Because server actions can hide API endpoints from the client side, which is good from a security perspective. If we use an API router of Nextjs or another API-based backend, then it increases the risk of attack by someone. In a production environment, the API server is not exposed directly, and the API gateway or firewall is there to control security risks. But there is no risk if we can hide in server-side actions, and user experience may improve. Performance should be good compared to the API router-based approach, because we can skip HTTP processing. Progressive enhancement is a question because we are using a JavaScript framework. This is just for work as the last resort in my opinion, who disable or cannot run JavaScript, so this has not become strong benefit. Server actions will not replace API-based implementation, of course. And I still like to use API from a system architecture point of view. Because I may not use Nextjs for the front end in the future, and other such native applications may need to call the same API at some point, which I need to access the backend from the client-side component. Then I may use it. I still don't know why people are so excited this is the game changer. Please put your comment if someone in the chat knows you well.